The Valthari Dominion had watched humanity for nearly a decade, studying their ships, their trade routes, and their behavior when confronted with superior force. Commander Zeroth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, surrounded by 11 other warships that formed the deadliest ambush fleet the Dominion had ever assembled in this sector. He was confident, perhaps too confident, because every report from Valthari intelligence suggested that humans were soft creatures who valued individual lives above victory, and who would surrender rather than fight against overwhelming odds. His tactical officer, a young Valthari named Keth, approached him with a data tablet showing the projected path of their target. "The human vessel will enter the nebula within the hour, Commander," Keth reported, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the information. Zeroth clicked his mandibles in satisfaction and gazed out at the swirling purple clouds of the Kessara Nebula that concealed his fleet. "And you are certain this ship carries valuable cargo?" he asked. "Medical supplies, refined metals, and advanced computer components," Keth confirmed. "The value is estimated at 300 million credits, and the ransom for the crew could double that amount." The commander allowed himself a moment of anticipation, because this single raid would bring him glory, wealth, and promotion within the Dominion hierarchy. He had planned everything perfectly, positioning his ships in a crescent formation that would cut off all escape routes the moment they decloaked. The humans would have no choice but to surrender, and Zeroth would return home a hero. Far across the void of space, the USS Relentless cruised steadily toward the nebula. With her running lights dim, and her crew going about their duties with quiet professionalism. She was not a warship by official classification, but anyone who looked closely would notice the reinforced hull plating, the oversized power conduits running to concealed weapon mounts, and the military-grade sensor array that swept space in all directions. Captain Nathan Cole sat in his command chair on the bridge, a cup of cold coffee resting in his hand as he reviewed supply manifests on his personal screen. He was a man of 47 years, with short gray hair, weathered skin from too many years under artificial light, and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. Those eyes had seen combat in 3 separate conflicts before he took command of a cargo hauler, and they never stopped watching for danger. His first officer, Lieutenant Commander Katie Price, worked at the sensor station with focused intensity. She was younger than the captain by 15 years, with auburn hair tied back in a regulation bun and a reputation for catching details that others missed. Something on her screen made her frown, and she leaned closer to study the readings. "Captain," she said without looking up, "I am picking up some unusual patterns in the nebula ahead." Nathan set down his coffee and turned his attention to her. "What kind of patterns?" he asked. "Electromagnetic fluctuations that do not match the natural variance we should expect," Katie explained. "It could be nothing, just some unusual cosmic activity, but it could also be something hiding in there." The captain considered this for a moment, then made his decision. "Sound general quarters," he ordered. "Do it quietly. No alarms. Just send the word through the internal comm system." Katie nodded and began transmitting the alert to all departments. Throughout the ship, crew members received the message and moved to their battle stations without panic or confusion. They had trained for this scenario dozens of times, and each person knew exactly where they needed to be and what they needed to do. In engine room, Chief Engineer Derek Santos received the alert on his personal communicator and immediately began preparing the ship for combat. He was a stocky man with thick arms covered in old burn scars from a reactor accident years ago, and he ran his department with fierce efficiency. "All right, people, you heard the call," he announced to his team. "I want auxiliary power routed to shields and weapons, and I want damage control teams standing by at all junction points. His engineers moved without hesitation, adjusting power distribution and preparing emergency systems. Derek had served with Captain Cole for 8 years, and he trusted the man completely. If Cole thought there might be trouble, then Derek would make sure the Relentless was ready to handle it. On the weapons deck, Gunnery Sergeant Ashley Monroe unlocked the ship's armaments with her command codes and began loading targeting solutions into the fire control computer. She was a slender woman with sharp features and steady hands that never trembled, no matter how tense the situation became. The Relentless carried weapons that most cargo haulers could only dream about, including twin railguns capable of accelerating metal slugs to devastating velocities, missile tubes loaded with high-yield warheads, and point defense cannons that could fill space with a wall of projectiles. Ashley ran diagnostics on each system and found everything in perfect working order because she accepted nothing less from their equipment. In the cargo bay, Security Chief Ryan Garza assembled his team and began distributing weapons and body armor. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a scar running across his jaw from a knife fight in his youth. And his people respected him because he never asked them to do anything he would not do himself. "We may have boarders coming," he told his team. "I want firing positions at every choke point, and I want backup charges ready to seal bulkheads if we need to slow them down." His security officers moved to their assigned positions with weapons ready and expressions grim. They knew that boarding actions were brutal, close-quarters affairs where training and determination mattered more than fancy equipment. Ryan had drilled them hard for months, and he believed they were ready for whatever came through those airlocks. Back on the bridge, Nathan watched the nebula growing larger on the main view screen and felt the familiar calm that always settled over him before combat. He had learned long ago that fear was useless in battle, that the only thing a captain could do was prepare his ship and trust his crew. "All departments report ready, Captain," Katie announced. "Good," Nathan replied. "Maintain current course and speed, and do not let them know we suspect anything." He wanted the enemy to commit to their ambush before he revealed his hand, because surprise worked both ways, and he intended to make sure the Relentless struck first and struck hard. The ship continued forward into the purple clouds of the nebula, sensors straining to pierce the electromagnetic interference, while 12 Valthari warships waited in the darkness ahead. Commander Zeroth watched the human vessel approaching on his tactical display and felt satisfaction spreading through his chest. The prey was walking directly into his trap, and in just a few minutes he would spring it and claim his prize. He had no idea that the humans were not prey at all, that they had prepared for exactly this kind of situation, and that the crew of the Relentless had absolutely no intention of surrendering to anyone. The trap was set, but neither side fully understood who was truly the hunter and who was truly the hunted. In the cold silence of space, two forces moved toward a collision that would change everything, and only one of them would survive to tell the story. The Valthari fleet decloaked in perfect synchronization, 12 warships appearing out of the nebula like predators emerging from shadow. Commander Zeroth felt pride swelling in his chest as his tactical display showed the human vessel completely surrounded with no avenue of escape. "Open a channel to the human ship," he ordered, and his communications officer obeyed immediately. Zeroth straightened his posture and composed his features into an expression of cold authority before he began speaking. "Human vessel, this is Commander Zeroth of the Valthari Dominion," he announced. "You are surrounded by superior forces and have no possibility of escape or victory. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded, and if you comply without resistance, then no harm will come to your crew." He ended the transmission and waited for the response that he was certain would come. A panicked plea for mercy or a desperate attempt to negotiate. The humans always, tried to negotiate because they were weak creatures who feared death above all things. On the bridge of the Relentless, the Valthari transmission played through the speakers, while the crew listened in silence. Nathan Cole remained perfectly still in his command chair, his expression revealing nothing as he studied the tactical display showing 12 hostile contacts surrounding his ship. Katie Price looked at him with raised eyebrows, waiting for his orders. "They think we are merchants," she observed. "They think we are prey," Nathan corrected, and then he opened a channel to the entire ship. "All hands, this is the captain speaking," he announced, his voice calm and steady. "We have 12 hostile vessels surrounding us and demanding our surrender. But I want to remind everyone that the Relentless has never ever surrendered to anyone, and we are not going to start today." He paused for a moment to let his words sink in, before continuing. "Departments, weapons free on my mark, and may God have mercy on anyone who tries to board this ship." In his command chair aboard the Crimson Talon, Commander Zeroth waited for the human response with growing impatience. His tactical officer reported that the human vessel had raised its shields to full power, which was an unexpected development, but not a concerning one. "Perhaps they wish to make a show of defiance before they surrender," Keth suggested. Zeroth clicked his mandibles in agreement, because that made sense. The humans would want to preserve their pride even as they accepted defeat. Then the Relentless opened fire, and everything Commander Zeroth believed about humans shattered in an instant. The first shots were not random or desperate, but precisely calculated strikes aimed at the 2 Valthari ships positioned to block the nebula exit. Twin railgun slugs accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, and crossed the distance between ships in less than a heartbeat. The Valthari shields were designed to resist energy weapons, but these were not energy weapons. These were solid metal projectiles carrying enough kinetic force to punch through armor like it was paper. Both targeted ships died before they could fire a single shot, their reactors breached and their hulls torn apart by the devastating impacts. Zeroth stared at his display in shock as 2 of his ships vanished from the tactical readout. "Return fire!" he screamed. "All ships, return fire immediately!" The Valtari fleet responded with a barrage of energy beams and plasma torpedoes. But the Relentless was already moving. Nathan Cole had anticipated exactly how the enemy would react, and he used their moment of confusion to dive beneath the Valtari formation. "Ashley, target the 2 ships on our port side," he ordered. "Katie, keep feeding her targeting solutions." "Aye, Captain," both women responded simultaneously. Ashley Monroe worked her console with ruthless efficiency, her fingers dancing across the controls as she locked weapons onto the designated targets. The Relentless might look like a cargo hauler, but she was armed like a warship, and Ashley knew how to use every weapon in the arsenal. "Missile lock confirmed on contacts 3 and 4, she announced. "Send them," Nathan commanded. 4 missiles streaked away from the Relentless, their drives burning bright against the purple clouds of the nebula. The targeted Valthari ships attempted evasive maneuvers, but the missiles were too fast and too smart. They adjusted their trajectories in real time, hunting their prey with mechanical patience. 2 of the missiles found their marks and detonated against Valthari shields, overloading the defensive systems and leaving the ships vulnerable. The other 2 missiles struck unshielded hull and turned the vessels into expanding clouds of debris. Commander Zeroth felt fear for the first time as he watched 4 of his ships destroyed in less than a minute of combat. This was not how the battle was supposed to go. The humans were supposed to surrender, not fight back with such terrifying effectiveness. "Concentrate fire on that ship," he ordered. "All remaining vessels, focus everything on the human target." But the Relentless refused to cooperate with his desperate strategy. Nathan Cole kept his ship moving, using the smaller profile of his vessel to stay between enemy ships where they risked hitting each other with their own weapons. He had studied Valthari tactics during his years in the Earth Defense Fleet, and he knew their weaknesses almost as well as he knew his own ship. "Derek, how are the shields holding?" he called down to engineering. "Shields at 82% and holding steady," Derek Santos reported. "They are hitting us, but nothing we cannot handle." A Valthari energy beam struck the Relentless and sent a shudder through the hull, but the shields absorbed the impact without failing. Katie tracked the attacking ship on her sensors and fed the coordinates to Ashley, who responded with a railgun burst that crippled the enemy vessel's engine section. "Contact 7 is disabled," Katie announced. "Contact 8 is attempting to flank us." "I see it," Ashley replied, already adjusting her aim. The battle continued with brutal intensity as the Relentless carved through the Valthari formation like a blade through flesh. Human reflexes, human training, and human technology combined to create a fighting force that the Valthari had never imagined possible. In the cargo bay, Ryan Garza and his security team waited for boarding attempts that never came. The enemy could not get close enough to launch shuttles, because every ship that approached the Relentless was met with devastating fire. Ryan listened to the battle reports coming through his communicator and felt grim satisfaction spreading through his chest. "Sounds like the captain is handling business up there," officers observed. "He always does," Ryan agreed. "But stay ready, because this is not over until every hostile is down." On the bridge of the Crimson Talon, Commander Zeroth watched his fleet dying and could not understand what had gone wrong. The humans were supposed to be weak, supposed to be cowardly, supposed to value their lives too much to fight against impossible odds. But the crew of the Relentless did not seem to care about odds at all. They fought with a ferocity and precision that defied everything Zeroth had been taught about their species. "Commander, we have lost 8 ships," Keth reported, his voice trembling with barely contained panic. "2 more are attempting to retreat." Zeroth wanted to order his remaining vessels to flee, but his pride would not allow it. He had come here expecting an easy victory, and now he faced the possibility of total annihilation at the hands of a single cargo ship. "Signal the fleet," he commanded. "All ships are to continue the attack." It was the wrong decision, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Zeroth knew it. But he could not bring himself to run from humans, could not accept that his entire understanding of this species had been catastrophically wrong. The battle was not over yet, but the outcome was already decided, and Commander Zeroth was only beginning to understand the terrible price of underestimating humanity. The Valthari had studied human history before launching their campaign of piracy against Earth vessels. They had read about the wars that plagued humanity for thousands of years, the endless conflicts that killed millions and reshaped civilizations. They had interpreted this violent history as evidence of weakness, a sign that humans were a chaotic species, incapable of controlling their own destructive impulses. What they failed to understand was that humanity's history of war had forged them into something far more dangerous than any species that had known only peace. Every human alive carried the legacy of ancestors who had survived impossible odds, who had fought and bled and refused to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. This legacy lived in the crew of the Relentless as they battled for their lives against a superior enemy force. In the engine room, Derek Santos moved between consoles with practiced efficiency as alarms wailed and damage reports flooded his screens. A Valthari energy blast had breached Deck 7, starting a fire that threatened to spread to critical systems. "Damage Control Team 3, get to Deck 7 now," Derek shouted into his communicator. "I want that fire contained in the next 2 minutes." His crew responded without hesitation, grabbing extinguishers and emergency equipment as they raced toward the breach. Derek trusted them to handle the situation while he focused on keeping power flowing to shields and weapons. The Relentless needed every advantage she could get, and he would not let his captain down by allowing the ship to lose power at a critical moment. He rerouted energy from non-essential systems like crew quarters lighting and recreation facilities, feeding that power into the defensive grid. "Engineering to bridge," he reported. "I'd have squeezed out another 8% for shields, and damage control is handling the fire on deck." 7. "Good work, Derek." Nathan's voice came back through the speaker. "Keep it coming." On the weapons deck, Ashley Monroe fired another salvo of missiles at a Valthari cruiser attempting to position itself for a broadside attack. The missiles streaked across space and slammed into the enemy vessel, overwhelming its shields and tearing deep wounds in its hull. She did not celebrate the hit because there was no time for celebration. 2 more enemy ships were maneuvering to replace their fallen comrade, and she needed to deal with them before they could bring their weapons to bear. "Switching to railguns," she announced. "Katie, give me a firing solution on Contact 9. "Sending now," Katie replied from the bridge. The targeting data appeared on Ashley's screen, and she made the tiny adjustments necessary to ensure a clean hit. Her railguns spoke twice, and Contact 9 shuddered as the hypervelocity slugs punched through its engineering section. The ship did not explode, but it stopped moving and stopped shooting, which meant it was no longer a threat. Ashley allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before turning her attention to the next target. In the cargo bay, Ryan Garza received word that one of the Valthari ships was attempting a desperate boarding action. A small shuttle had launched from a damaged cruiser and was racing toward the Relentless with a squad of Valthari soldiers aboard. "Looks like we are getting company after all," Ryan told his team. "Everyone to positions and remember your training." His security officers spread out through the cargo bay, taking cover behind crates and equipment while keeping their weapons trained on the airlock. Ryan positioned himself at the front, his rifle steady in his hands as he waited for the enemy to arrive. The shuttle slammed into the docking port with enough force to shake the deck beneath their feet, and then the airlock began cycling. "Hold fire until you have clear targets," Ryan ordered. "Make every shot count." The airlock opened, and Valthari soldiers poured through with weapons blazing. They were tall creatures with 4 arms and chitinous armor covering their bodies, and they moved with the confidence of warriors who expected to overwhelm their opponents through superior numbers. They were wrong. Ryan opened fire, and his team followed his lead, filling the airlock with a devastating crossfire that cut down the first wave of boarders before they could take 3 steps. The Valthari had never faced human soldiers in close combat, and they were not prepared for the speed and accuracy of the defenders. Ryan advanced through the carnage, stepping over fallen aliens as he pushed toward the airlock. A Valthari soldier lunged at him from behind a crate, but Ryan was faster. He ducked under the alien's swing and drove the butt of his rifle into its throat, then finished it with a shot to the head. "Clear the shuttle," he shouted. "No survivors." His team swept through the boarding craft and eliminated the remaining Valthari soldiers with brutal efficiency. The entire boarding action lasted less than 4 minutes, and when it was over, not a single alien remained alive. "Security to bridge," Ryan reported. "Boarding attempt neutralized. 0 casualties on our side." "Outstanding work, Chief," Nathan replied. "Stay alert for additional attempts." On the bridge, Nathan Cole watched the battle reaching its conclusion as the last Valthari ships either died or surrendered. The engagement had lasted 11 minutes from the first shot to the final surrender, and in that time, the Relentless had destroyed or disabled 10 of the 12 enemy vessels. Commander Zeroth's flagship, the Crimson Talon, drifted dead in space with its engines destroyed and its hull venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches. A torpedo strike had crippled the ship and killed most of its crew, but sensors indicated that some survivors remained in emergency shelters. "Contact reports negative for active hostiles," Katie announced, her voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. 2 enemy vessels have surrendered, and the rest are destroyed or disabled. Nathan nodded slowly and allowed himself to relax for the first time since the battle began. "Casualties?" he asked. 12 wounded, 3 of them serious, Katie reported. "No fatalities." The captain closed his eyes for a moment and silently thanked whatever higher power might be listening for protecting his crew. 12 wounded was bad, but it could have been so much worse. They had faced 12 warships and survived with their ship intact and their people alive. "Get medical teams moving," he ordered, "and send search and rescue to pull survivors out of that wreckage." Katie looked at him with surprise, because showing mercy to enemies who had tried to kill them was not something she had expected. "Captain?" she questioned. "They attacked us, and they lost," Nathan explained. "That does not mean we leave them to die in the cold, because we are not monsters, Katie. We are humans, and we do better than that." She nodded and began coordinating the rescue effort, while Nathan sat back in his chair and surveyed the destruction surrounding his ship. Somewhere out there, Commander Zeroth was either dead or dying, and Nathan felt no satisfaction in that knowledge. He had not wanted this fight, had not asked for it, but when it came, he had done what was necessary to protect his ship and his crew. War. Fight with everything you have when you must. Show mercy when you can. And never forget that every enemy is someone's son or daughter or parent. The Relentless had won the day, but the true test was still to come, because winning a battle was easy compared to winning the peace that followed. Commander Zeroth survived the destruction of his flagship by reaching an emergency escape pod moments before the hull breached. He floated among the debris of his fleet for 3 hours, watching through the tiny viewport as human rescue teams pulled survivors from the wreckage of Valthari ships. Part of him expected them to leave him there to die, to ignore his pod, and let the cold vacuum of space claim one more victim. But they did not ignore him. Petty Officer Samantha Vega led the search and rescue team that found his pod drifting near the remains of the Crimson Talon. She was a small woman with dark hair and a no-nonsense attitude, and she approached the alien commander with professional efficiency rather than hatred. "We have a live one here," she reported through her communicator. "Looks like a senior officer based on the uniform markings." "Bring him in," came the reply from the Relentless. "The captain wants to talk to him." Maneuvered her rescue shuttle alongside the escape pod and extended the docking tube. Zeroth considered resisting, considered fighting to the death rather than accepting the humiliation of capture, but his survival instinct proved stronger than his pride. He allowed himself to be taken aboard the shuttle, where Samantha and her team restrained him with magnetic cuffs and conducted a thorough search for weapons. "You speak our language?" Samantha asked as she worked. Zeroth nodded slowly, because all Valthari officers were required to learn human standard as part of their training. "Then understand this," she continued. "You are a prisoner of war, and you will be treated according to human conventions, which means no torture, no abuse, and no summary execution. But if you try anything stupid, I will personally throw you out an airlock." Her voice was calm and matter-of-fact, as if she was discussing the weather rather than threatening his life. Zeroth believed her completely. They brought him to the Relentless and escorted him to the brig, where he was placed in a cell with an energy barrier separating him from the corridor. The cell was small, but not uncomfortable, with a bed, a toilet, and a small sink that provided clean water. Zeroth sat on the bed and stared at the wall, trying to process everything that had happened. 12 ships destroyed by a single cargo hauler. 3,000 Valthari soldiers dead or captured. His entire fleet annihilated in less than 15 minutes of combat. He could not understand how everything had gone so wrong, how his carefully planned ambush had turned into a massacre of his own forces. The humans were supposed to be weak, supposed to surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Instead, they had fought like demons and destroyed everything he had built. Hours passed in silence before Captain Nathan Cole came to visit him, walked into the brig alone, carrying a simple metal chair that he set down facing the energy barrier. He sat down and studied Zeroth for a long moment, his expression revealing nothing. "Do you know who I am?" Nathan asked. "You are the captain of this ship," Zeroth replied, "the one who destroyed my fleet." "My name is Nathan Cole," the human said, "and yes, I am the one who gave the orders that killed your people, though I take no pleasure in that fact." Zeroth made a sound of disbelief with his mandibles. "You expect me to believe that you regret killing my soldiers?" he demanded. "I regret that it was necessary," Nathan replied. "I regret that you forced my hand by attacking my ship without provocation, and I regret that 3,000 lives were lost because someone in your government decided that humans were easy targets." The alien commander fell silent because he had not expected this kind of response. He had expected gloating, mockery, perhaps even cruelty, but the human captain spoke with quiet sincerity that was difficult to dismiss. "You lost 12 ships today," Nathan continued. "Over 3,000 of your people are dead, and dozens more are wounded and will carry scars for the rest of their lives. And all of this happened because you thought we would surrender." "Your kind is supposed to be peaceful," Zeroth said. "Your diplomats speak of cooperation and mutual benefit, and your merchants travel without escort." "No human vessel travels without protection," Nathan corrected. "We simply do not advertise our capabilities to potential enemies. And yes, we prefer peace because we have seen enough war to understand its true cost. But when war comes to us, we do not hesitate or hold back." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on the alien's face. "You studied our history before you planned this attack, did you not?" Nathan asked. Zeroth nodded reluctantly. "You know about our wars, the conflicts that shaped our species over thousands of years," Nathan said. "But you misunderstood what that history means." "We believed it showed weakness," Zeroth admitted. "A species that could not control itself." "You were wrong," Nathan replied. "Our wars taught us how to fight, how to survive, and how to win against impossible odds. And every human alive carries that knowledge in their blood." He stood up and pushed the chair aside. "I am the descendant of soldiers who stormed beaches under enemy fire," he said. "My ancestors fought in frozen trenches, marched across burning deserts, and walked on the moon, not because it was easy, but because it was hard. And that legacy lives in me, and in every member of my crew." Zeroth felt something cold spreading through his chest as he listened to the human speak. He had never truly understood what he was facing until this moment, had never grasped the depth of human determination. "And the weight of their history. What happens now?" he asked. "Your government will be contacted," Nathan replied. "There will be consequences for this attack, though the nature of those consequences depends on how your leaders respond." He moved toward the door, but paused before leaving. "Pray that they choose diplomacy, Commander, because the next time Valfari ships threaten a human vessel, we will not leave survivors to carry warnings." The door closed behind him, and Zeroth was left alone with his thoughts. He sat in his cell for hours, replaying the battle in his mind, and trying to find the moment where he could have chosen differently. But there was no such moment, because the mistake had been made long before the first shot was fired. The mistake was believing that humans could be conquered, that they would break under pressure, that they valued survival more than victory. Zeroth had learned the truth the hard way, and he suspected that his entire species would soon learn it as well. The humans were not prey to be hunted. They were something far more dangerous, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were survivors, fighters, and conquerors who had chosen peace, not because they were weak, but because they understood the terrible cost of war. And when someone forced them to fight, they fought with everything they had, until nothing remained of their enemies but ashes and memories. Commander Zeroth closed his eyes and wondered if the Valthari Dominion would survive the storm they had awakened. 3 weeks after the battle in the Kessara Nebula, a data packet arrived at Valthari Dominion capital through secure diplomatic channels. The packet contained complete sensor recordings from the engagement, showing every shot fired, every ship destroyed, and every moment of the 11-minute massacre from multiple angles. The recordings were accompanied by a message from Admiral Patricia Hayes of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Admiral Hayes was a woman of 62 years, with silver hair and a reputation for speaking plainly, regardless of who might be offended. She had reviewed the footage personally and had composed her message with careful attention to every word. To the leadership of the Valthari Dominion, her message began. 3 weeks ago, 12 warships under your flag ambushed a civilian cargo vessel in neutral space, and the crew of that vessel defended themselves against this unprovoked attack. And I am sending you this footage so that you may understand exactly what happened and why. The message continued in the same measured tone. We do not seek conflict with your people, and we do not desire war, but we will not be victims, and we will not allow aggression against our ships and citizens to go unanswered. The crew of the USS Relentless showed remarkable restraint in accepting the surrender of your surviving vessels, and in rescuing wounded personnel from the wreckage of your fleet. And Commander Zeroth and other prisoners are being held in humane conditions, pending negotiations for their return. Consider this message our only warning. Any further aggression against human vessels or human territories will be met with the full force of our combined fleets, and we have spent 10,000 years learning how to wage war, and we would prefer to spend the next 10,000 learning how to keep peace. The choice is yours. The Valthari Council watched the recordings in stunned silence, as they witnessed the destruction of their ambush fleet. Talks among the council demanded immediate retaliation, arguing that allowing this humiliation to stand would encourage other species to challenge Valthari dominance. But the recordings told a story that even the most aggressive council members could not ignore. A single cargo ship had destroyed 12 warships in 11 minutes, while suffering no fatalities among its crew. The human weapons had torn through Valthari's shields like they were not there, and the human crew had fought with coordination and precision that defied everything the Dominion believed about the species. We underestimated them, the eldest council member said. We believed they were soft because they preferred diplomacy, but softness and preference are not the same thing. The debates continued for 6 days, as different factions argued for different responses. Convinced that the Dominion's superior numbers would eventually overwhelm human defenses. Others wanted peace, recognizing that war with humanity would cost far more than any potential gain could justify. In the end, pragmatism won over pride. The Dominion sent an ambassador to Earth with instructions to negotiate a formal peace treaty and secure the release of Commander Zeroth and the other prisoners. The ambassador was received with courtesy but without warmth, and the negotiations were conducted with professional efficiency on both sides. A treaty was signed that established clear boundaries and trade agreements between human space and Valthari territory. The Dominion agreed to pay compensation for the unprovoked attack, and in return, the prisoners were released to return home. Commander Zeroth was among those who returned to Valthari space, though he was stripped of his rank and forbidden from serving in the military ever again. He spent the rest of his years writing detailed accounts of his experiences, warning future generations about the danger of underestimating humanity. His writings became required reading at Valthari military academies, a cautionary tale about the price of arrogance. Back on Earth, Captain Nathan Cole received a commendation for his actions in the Kessara Nebula. He accepted the medal with quiet grace, pinned it in a drawer with a dozen others from previous service, and returned to the Relentless for her next voyage. The cargo still needed to be delivered after all, and Nathan was not the kind of man who let fame interfere with his duties. Lieutenant Commander Katie Price was promoted to full commander and given her own ship, a light cruiser named the Vigilant. She took command with the same focused intensity she had shown as first officer, and her crew quickly learned that she expected nothing less than excellence from everyone under her command. Chief Engineer Derek Santos published a technical paper on emergency power distribution during combat situations, and his work became required reading at the Earth Defense Academy. He continued serving aboard the Relentless for another decade before retiring to teach the next generation of engineers. Gunnery Sergeant Ashley Monroe received a commendation for her weapons performance during the battle. She used the recognition to secure funding for improved targeting systems that she had been developing for years, and her innovations eventually became standard equipment on all Earth defense vessels. Security Chief Ryan Garza trained a new generation of shipboard security personnel based on the lessons learned during the boarding action. His methods emphasized speed, precision, and overwhelming force at the point of contact, and they proved effective in countless engagements over the following years. But the most significant consequence of the battle was not the medals or promotions or technological advancements. Improvements, the most significant consequence was the story itself, which spread through trade routes and diplomatic channels until every species in the known galaxy had heard some version of it. A human cargo ship, ambushed by 12 warships, had refused to surrender and destroyed its attackers almost to the last vessel. The details varied depending on who told the story, but the central truth remained constant. Humans were not prey. They were something else entirely, something that predators learned to fear. Other species began treating human vessels with new respect, giving them wide berth in neutral space, and thinking twice before challenging human interests. Pirates who had once viewed human merchants as easy targets suddenly found other hunting grounds, and hostile powers reconsidered their plans for expansion into human-controlled sectors. The Cassara Nebula became a landmark, a place where travelers would pause and remember what had happened there. Some said you could still find debris from the battle if you looked hard enough. Fragments of Valthari warships drifting in the purple clouds, like monuments to a fatal miscalculation. Captain Nathan Cole never sought fame for what he had done, never wrote memoirs or gave interviews about the battle. When people asked him about it, he would simply shrug and say that he had done his job, nothing more. But those who served with him knew the truth. They knew that Nathan Cole had faced impossible odds and refused to bend, that he had protected his crew through skill and courage and sheer determination, and that he represented everything that made humanity dangerous to those who threatened them. The universe was vast and full of species who believed themselves superior to others, who thought that strength gave them the right to prey upon the weak. But humanity had never been weak, not truly. They had been tested by 10,000 years of history and had emerged stronger for every trial. They preferred peace because they understood war, and they chose diplomacy because they knew the alternative. But when someone forced their hand, when someone pushed them into a corner and demanded surrender, they responded with the full weight of their heritage. They fought like their ancestors had fought, with courage and cunning, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. And in the cold darkness between stars, the story of the Relentless served as a warning to anyone who might forget this truth. Humans were not victims. Humans were not prey. Humans were the storm that predators learned to fear, the fire that burned those who reached for easy conquests, the sword that fell upon those who mistook kindness for weakness. And anyone who forgot this lesson would learn it again, just as Commander Zeroth had learned it in the Cassara Nebula.